So Melissa and I are here at the museum in Victoria, Museum of the Coastal Bend, and it's a pretty small little museum here in Victoria, but just like with the zoo, still want to support the local community, and we'll see what's inside. All right, further updates later on. So we just finished our tour of the museum here. Very interesting story of how the French attempted to colonize this part of Texas by accident. They were on their way to the Mississippi and they ended up here, and their ship getting run aground, and then the colonists trying to make it, interacting with the native people, but eventually they lost their ship, and the leader of the expedition, La Salle, he and a group of people tried to make it to, I guess, a French port in the Illinois River, and the remaining population was wiped out by the indigenous population. Who knows what transpired between them and the colonists, but they basically killed everybody except for a small handful of children. And then later on, the Spanish came to this area, salvaged the cannons that were at the fort, and rescued the children. And so that's how they knew what happened. Meanwhile, La Salle and his expedition that were trying to get to Illinois, a fight broke out between members of the crew that were with him, and La Salle, well, I guess his lieutenant was murdered, and then La Salle was killed, and then the remaining members of the expedition, some stayed with the local population as they traveled through, and I guess a handful made it back to France. And one of the members kept a really extensive journal, so we kind of knew what happened as far as that goes. But it was a failed attempt by the French to settle this area, and then later resettled by the Spanish. But that's how Victoria, Texas came about, because of the French, and then later the Spanish establishing a colony here, and the Spanish were able to actually be successful. I don't know what the story is with the Spanish, whether they brought more men, more guns, but they were able to actually get a foothold and maintain possession of this area. So that's it. It was a very nice little museum here at the university. It's free to the public. It had some very nice artifacts of the indigenous populations, as well as from the actual salvaged boat that La Salle brought here, and the colony and the fort that they had built. But yeah, it was very interesting. When was the 16? So that was 1684 when the La Salle expedition made their colony. So, you know, that's quite a history, almost 400 years ago. And okay, little other thing. That's why Victoria County has something to do with flying the French flag, because it was the only area or county that actually was possessed or owned by the French, even for a short period of time. So they get that claim to fame, if that's anything to be claiming, I guess, historically. Yeah, the French were here, even though they didn't last very long. All right, so that's it for the tour for the museum here in Victoria. Nice little museum. I recommend it if you're ever in this area. Come by, visit, see their very nice displays. That's it. Hasta luego.